Emperor is the first novel in the trilogy, The Council of Nobles. The next three scenes comprise Chapter 1, Hubris, 2046. This is Scene 1, Philip. Philip raised the zipper of his collar until the wool covered his entire neck. Manhattan was cold this morning, even for the middle of January. When he opened the wrought iron gate, Sasha's double-layered white coat rippled like snow as he struggled against the leash. He was eager to get to the park, but Philip wouldn't let go. They were too far from the corner to see beyond 5th Avenue and 79th Street. Once it was clear there were no cars, they stepped onto the path that wound around the glade arch. Philip yawned as Sasha trotted over to a tree, lifted his hind leg, and peed. In the middle of the night, the dog's real owner returned to the house for an unexpected visit. No forewarning, no explanation, just that bright, useful energy that always warmed Philip's heart. He hadn't heard the door when Irene came in, but Sasha woke him up when he darted into the hall. The dog didn't bark, so it could only be one person. Philip's daughter had moved out of the house and left her childhood pet behind. It all happened this week, and while he wondered whether he should be worried, a familiar voice nudged Philip out of his thoughts. "Is Eleanor better this morning? Her mother mentioned she was having a hard time." The elegant woman in the pink Chanel evening jacket and white silk gloves was an adult when Philip's wife was born. He can only imagine how old Miss Russell was now. "Irene's back," he said. "Oh," she cooed. "That's always better for Ellie." "I imagine so," Miss Russell concurred. Shortly after buying the townhouse next to his in-laws, Philip discovered this elderly lady was the unofficial queen of the Upper East Side. When Sasha patted over and poked his nose at the hem of her jacket, she bent down and scratched behind his ear. "I bet you're happy to see Irene as well," she said. As if comprehending, the dog opened his mouth and wagged his tail. 100 yards away, a sanitation bot marched silently down 5th Avenue. His metal arms lifted and emptied refuse cans while his long legs swept and cleaned the sidewalk. Philip was skeptical when city officials first proposed the octopus-looking things. He didn't doubt their efficiency. He just thought they might scare people. Reluctantly, he gave the mayor permission to try them for a month. Once all 5 boroughs received a battery of the machines, the Big Apple went from being the dirtiest to the cleanest metropolis in the country. The bots weren't released until the middle of the night and have become part of the city's nocturnal tableau. In the end, New Yorkers didn't care how they looked and were only too pleased with the results. Confirming that fact, Miss Russell ignored the monstrosity as it lumbered along the edge of Central Park. She straightened her back, extended her arm, and peered at a watch whose band was studded with diamonds. Then, with the air of a monarch, she surveyed the area and said, "Thank you, by the way." Philip looked around, confused. "For what?" "Don't be modest, Philip." Miss Russell pursed her lips. "You and that Victor fellow saved the country." He would have barked out a laugh if it weren't for the rush of pride. She was the first person to thank him directly since he became the patriarch of the Northeast. It had been years since Philip heard the phrase, "that Victor fellow." Without meaning to, Miss Russell brought to mind one of the few people he ever missed. Before his grandmother's death, it seemed the world was on the verge of coming to an end. "For some reason," she said during a hospital visit, "God loves drunks, little children, and the United States of America." Philip's heart broke a little as he remembered how she leaned forward and whispered, "We probably don't deserve it, but I'm confident we'll get through this." She smiled. "We're counting on smart young men like you to steer us out of this mess." Several years later, Philip, Victor, and Natalia managed to defeat the autocrat and his followers. Old money like Miss Russell was essential to that fight. They were used to manipulating the criminal justice system and knew exactly what to do once the Council of Nobles was in place. With thousands of insurrectionists rotting in jail and one patriarch in charge of managing each of the country's 13 regional economies, America was more prosperous than it had ever been. If only Gran were alive to see this, Philip thought. "What's the matter?" Miss Russell asked. Philip straightened his back and put on a brave face. "I've been so caught up in the day-to-day, I'd forgotten how things were before." Cutting him off, Miss Russell reached up and placed a gloved hand on his arm. "Our support was extended to you, not to the others," she said. "I'm thanking you, Philip, to ensure you never forget." The meetings to raise the money they needed were held in Ellie's childhood home, but the region's wealthy attended because of Philip's last name. When Congress issued the charter creating the Council of Nobles, there was never any doubt as to whether House Harrington would be in charge of the Northeast. I won't forget, Philip thought, but before he could make that commitment aloud, the old woman added, "Tell Irene and Eleanor to come and see me." Even though the command suggested this was his most important task for the day, it brought a smile to Philip's face. Ellie was included in the impromptu summons, but like his in-laws, Miss Russell really only wanted to see Irene and find out what's going on with the new house, he thought. "Sometime around noon?" Philip asked. "Just have them call me," she said. Then, without another word, Miss Russell turned, crossed the street, and ambled down 79th. Philip and Sasha did the same after making their usual circuit around Central Park. His wife and daughter were always late to rise, so despite his insistence they do everything as a family, Philip had grown used to having breakfast alone. Savoring the last bite of his steak, he felt his cranial phone come to life in his head. The message had to be urgent this early in the morning, but Philip took a moment to swallow and wipe his chin. The importance of spending time with his family without being disturbed had driven him to be the most effective patriarch on the council. Last night, he put the phone on mute, as he did every evening, and was reluctant to unmute the organic device since it wasn't even 7 a.m. With a sigh, he leaned back in his chair and launched Monocle. A text message from his friend and confidant Samir appeared 2 feet in front of his face. S. House Dacos has requested a meeting. Having reviewed your schedule, I set it for 9 o'clock. That's odd, Philip thought. They were both native New Yorkers, but it had been a long time since Victor came to his domain without weeks of planning and preparation. His old college roommate wasn't the buddy-buddy type, but their families had grown close over the years. Ellie talked to Natalia every day, and Irene and Olympia were best friends. I bet they know what this is about, Philip thought, as he blew out a breath and tossed the napkin on the table. Engaging the T-Message app, he composed a response with his mind. P. I want to see Victor alone first. Escort him to my office when they arrive. Have our delegates meet theirs in the usual place. S. Understood. As he rose to his feet, Philip considered how Miss Russell's words had felt like a compliment, but looking back, he realized they may actually have been a warning. Our support was extended to you, not to the others, she said. I'm thanking you, Philip, to ensure you never forget. The old woman had a knack for spotting storms when most people had no idea they were coming, but getting her to share the things she knew required a special kind of patience. Ellie can feel her out, Philip thought, as he wandered absent-mindedly into the foyer. The antique hall stand had a mirror, the center of which captured the appearance of overnight gray. The man in the glass frowned as Philip grabbed his coat. Although he and his father were of average height, nothing triggered a resemblance like signs of age. His other features were courtesy of his mother, soft green eyes, blonde hair, and a sharp aquiline nose. Before Philip took over as patriarch of the Northeast, James, Victoria, and his brother Thomas had New Yorkers believing his entire family was rotten to the core. Despite that, his father was fond of saying, Vicky's the beauty, I'm the beast. With a surge of revulsion, Philip turned sharply and marched like a sentinel up the stairs. When they started dating in high school, he practically moved in with Ellie and her family. All these years later, Mr. and Mrs. Pettypiece were the parents that Philip had wanted all his life. A green light on the wall confirmed that his vertical takeoff and land limousine was waiting on the roof. No matter the time of year, the helipad was colder than the sidewalk. Philip shuddered when the door opened, and an eerie chill struck his face. The gusts blowing off the Hudson recalled the insidious sense of menace that pervaded the country when the autocrat was in power. Like muscle memory, an instinct to fight kicked in. He didn't need another omen to know this was going to be a challenging day. The wind whipped his coat like a cape as he strode toward the VTOL. Engaging Monaco, he sent another message to Samir. P. Alert me as soon as you have their agenda. Lock and load, old friend. Victor is an ally, but we both know he can be a pain in the ass. I've got a bad feeling about this meeting.